By the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down. Do you remember that one?
Vaguely. I think I tried to block that. I
Oh,
think I tried to block that one out, Graham, and then it was just like a bit of a throwback to the 70s. Am I going to
yeah,
be?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
There was a great dance that went with it. It was kind of like,
Right.
do-do-do-do. When we remember, there we go. So for all of you that wonder why a program about ergonomics is starting with a bit of Boney M this morning, because it's all
Mhm.
about positivity. So bring your whatever drink you're drinking, but bring it with a cup of positivity this morning. You've got a white mug there.
Well, there's a story behind this, and you
Oh,
can't quite see it, but it is a positivity mug. It is a
cool.
mug from 2001, from Germany 1, England 5, with that famous victory in Munich. And I think it's been used that many times.
It's
I don't
washed
think you
off.
can. Can you
Oh
just
yeah,
see
you
the?
can just
Hang on,
about see it. Yeah.
you could just about see the 5-1. So it is. This is the ultimate cup of positivity because it
It's
was it delivered a great result. So ever I'm sort of thinking, oh, I dig this mug out.
There you go. It's a bit like the opposite of some of those mugs where they change colour to reveal something when you
Yes.
put hot water in.
Mm,
You've had that in the dishwasher or
yeah.
whatever, and what was on the outside has now disappeared.
It disappeared.
Oh, there you go. This
So
morning. So we're back here,
we are.
Stephen and I, back live today. So bring your questions. You've got any questions that you want to ask us about ergonomics?
Yeah.
If there's anything you want to discuss to do with what's going on in the workplace, the greater scheme of things, then please do bring that along. Now, one of the things that I was doing a little bit of reading around this morning to do with ergonomics, and this is quite an interesting topic for discussion to kick us off,
Yeah.
is to do with ergonomics, whether or not actually it's better to make the adjustment around the person or whether it's better to make the adjustment around the workplace.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Okay.
interesting one. Now, from the research that I've been reading this morning, it actually comes out that it's better by quite a substantial percentage to make the adjustment around the workplace,
Okay.
not the person. And
Right.
this actually might tie into really and give us some feedback as to why, even though people like you and me bang on and on and on about do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, etc., nobody does it.
Mm.
Because it seems that as human beings, we are kind of typically prone to habit.
Okay.
And what the research is fundamentally saying is if we can actually get people like ergonomists and people that really understand how people work, because I mean that's what ergonomics is about, isn't it?
Yeah.
The relationship between the work that's being done and the human being that's doing it.
Yes.
If we can get people like that into the workplace prior to the people being there, if you like, yeah, if we can get them involved in the actual design of the process in the first place, the work task in the first place, the environment in the first place, then what we'll find is we will effect change better because the people then coming into that space will naturally do it in a way which is better for them.
Yeah.
Because it's already been designed better.
Yes.
To enable them to do it better. If, however, we make an absolute pig's dollops of it and design the technical term, you'll find that in every ergonomics handbook. And we design the workplace poorly, and we don't really think about people when it comes to tasks. Then what we're trying to do is we're trying to retrofit all the time. We're trying to put a band-aid on a poor solution that's already there. And actually what we find is that typically people go to work there for a while, then start to have issues, then start to complain, then we do assessments, then all of the issues come up. Then an ergonomist comes in, or a workplace assessor goes in and goes, yeah, well, this isn't right, but clearly we can't change all of this because you've spent X amount of thousands on all of this. So the best accommodation we can do is this.
And it makes you think, Graham, how much more important, relevant, whatever you want to call it, this is going to be with shared workspaces.
Absolutely.
Because if you start thinking about it, you're going to have people coming into workstations that maybe are now being shared. The ramp up around hot desking, we've been through the whole, subject we've banged on about is people sort of hybrid working between the home and the office. But actually, the workspace is going to be really, really important, because one day it could be a 6'6" guy who weighs 18 stone sat at that workstation, to the next day is a lady who's 5'1", 7.5 stone, and particularly petite. The workspace or the workstation has to have the ability to flex around that individual, because those two people will need something that is going to have a huge amount of differences in terms of dimensions and functionality. So it's really, really important that the workspace is designed in mind with it's going to have to change. It could be 5 different people sat at that workstation throughout the week, of various heights, of various weights, of various there could be some requirements in there around some sort of disability requirements, needed. So actually, it's really, really important that people, when they're redesigning workspaces, they're thinking about, it could be a large plethora of people who could be actually using that workspace on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And when it comes to tasks, are we really honing in on tasks properly as well? We have a comment.
We do.
From Jody. Hi, Jody. Friend of the show, Jody, who will be appearing in the show by magic.
Yep.
The magic of, I fell on my arm there for a minute. All the magic of digitalization. Unless she wants to join us, of course, that we can make that happen, and we can make the magic of Jody actually appearing live as well happen. If you want to do that, Jody, just let us know and we'll send you the link. All the things that were often missed in the past for shift workers, they certainly benefit now too. Absolutely. Totally agree. So now hold that conversation in your head, that actually it's really important for businesses to start thinking about the environment and the process and everything else earlier. I've also been asked a lot this week about, aren't we actually seeing a lot more people returning to the office now, or a lot more businesses are now trying to get their people back to the office? So we've kind of had this period where everybody's been working from home, but we are seeing, and I've had this 2 or 3 conversations this week with people on LinkedIn, where people are saying, we are now being told, get back to the office. Right?
Yeah.
And there seems to be a move towards trying to get people back to the office. However, hold that conversation, because at the same time, there's also research out there that is showing that by 2035, the amount of digital nomads, now we're not talking about remote working here, but in the way that a lot of people think about remote working, but people that will be working anywhere on any given day, from any location, anywhere, the amount of digital nomads on the planet will reach 1 billion by 2035. So what's happening in the workplace? Is the workplace becoming polaric? Is the workplace becoming either that over there or that over there? Is it becoming total freedom, or back to the grindstone? I can't believe that it is. I'm sure there's got to be a lot more of this middle ground, and the middle ground seemingly for me is hybrid.
Yeah.
But and that leads on to the next part of this conversation. I am having more and more and more conversations with culture change people. And I had a great conversation with Freddie from the Red Thread Partnership during the week on this. And if you haven't connected to him on LinkedIn, please do, because he's a great contact. Who said to me, hybrid is really dangerous.
Oh, okay.
It's a really dangerous concept for good culture within a business, because effectively hybrid doesn't really exist.
Okay.
It's a management construct. It's about, and I totally agree with him on this. I think hybrid is really about trying to regain management control. It's about trying to say, we don't want you all off over there. We probably want you here. We don't really know how to cope with it. Let's create something called hybrid, and let's push a prescriptiveness back onto this so that we've regained some element of control. That isn't actually dealing with the issue. Big thinking from me this morning. I'm really trying to push this off, but is hybrid an issue? Is hybrid actually causing us?
I'm not so sure employees will let businesses dictate, mandate, whatever you want to call it, that return to the office as we knew it pre-March 2020. I just don't think it will happen, because I think too many people have found that it works far better for them for a work-life balance, and they don't want to return to it. And the risk for an organization's perspective is that thing we've discussed a number of times, Graham, the Great Resignation. Whilst it's happened periodically, I think if certain organizations tried to sort of loosely mandate that return to the office, I think they would then have their own individual Great Resignation, and you'll see little pockets of it as companies try to do things. I just don't see how it's going to happen. The problem is, you can talk about it. Let's look at all the conflicting factors. We've got the price of fuel that's gone up. So if you're not able to use public transport, and for whatever reason it would be it location, be it personal circumstances, you have to drive, it's really, really expensive to drive into work. You look at the train, there's, how often are we seeing train strikes at the moment? I know they won't carry on forever, but that again is going to turn people off from going into the office. I've gone to London a couple of times recently, and the train service it's just completely different to what it was. You used to be able to get, every 20 minutes there was a train that was 1 hour 5, 1 hour 6 from Birmingham into London, and didn't really seem to be going. It seemed to be 1 hour 25, 135, right. 150. I think there's too many conflicting things going on. I also, just the general cost of things, I think, is going to put people off, and it's going to stop that actually happening. Now, yes, some sort of hybrid is really important from a culture perspective to make sure people are engaged. They're not 5 days at home and they're nothing to do with anyone else. But I think if they try and sort of push it beyond that traditional 2-3-3-2 that we've spoken about, I think companies then potentially are going to then cause themselves some sort of issues, because I think there will be pushback, and potentially in individual circumstances, people voting with their feet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, let's get a third opinion in on this, because that would be great. So what we're going to do is I'm going to shuffle over, make some space, so that
everyone move. No, hang on, that way. Let's move.
That we can do this, and let's bring in Jodie.
Hey,
hello.
I'll squeeze in the middle.
You squeeze in the middle. That's it.
Rose between two thorns, or
everybody tuck in. That's it. There we go. Jodie,
well, we need to keep warm now, don't we? Because the cost of electricity, we need to sort of keep a bit closer. Otherwise, it'll be, we'll all be freezing, won't we?
Absolutely. Maybe that's a good point in terms of actually hold that thought there, because maybe that is actually a good reason why some people would want to get back to the office.
Yes.
And with that as well, I will bring up the fact that somebody actually had a conversation with me yesterday about the fact that people need to get people back to the office, because this is part of the reason we're having an energy crisis, is because the suppliers are not getting the supply of electricity to offices, the bigger buildings, which is what pays the bills. So, and because at home you'd all turn it off, wouldn't you? Yeah. At home you just put on another jumper, but in the office you'd have to have it on because you've got to accommodate everybody. So that's what's causing the problem. Anyway, Jodie, we're talking about hybrid working, and I said that I was speaking to a culture change person earlier in the week, and they said hybrid is dangerous. What's your view on hybrid?
So first of all, I don't even like the word, right? Because the word to me is just controlling. So I'm all for, accessible or inclusive working. So it's what works for people. And of course, they still need to be productive. But I think we've all proven through COVID that we can actually work in other places and still do the job. So I think that's one thing for me. But also, for instance, it's that control thing that you were talking about, because I was talking to a company just yesterday, and I won't name anyone, but if you work within a vicinity of one of their 2 UK offices, you're expected to go to the office at least 2 days a week.
Wow.
But all of the people that, because they do employ people right throughout the country, all of the people that aren't within an easy commute, what they deem easy, absolutely don't need to ever go to an office and can work from home full time.
So you've immediately got a split.
Right. So for people who, even if it's only going to take you half an hour to an office, that can be the world of difference in your work-life balance and being able to take the kids to school before you start work and that kind of stuff. You've got this kind of two-tiered workforce immediately. You kind of want to move to the Outer Hebrides so that you can do your thing, right?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it sounds like a great excuse to go, well, I'm going to up sticks and move out further afield. I mean, and that does bring in a cultural element to all of this discussion, which is interesting, because some of the time that I have, some of the conversations that I've had lately about this, people have said, in fact, some of the people that we went to see the other week when we were doing the filming, it was said that they'd noticed this. There's a lot of people who have moved during the pandemic so that they were further away from work and then they worked from home, but it didn't actually suit their lifestyle outside of work. So now they've moved back.
But I'm also seeing the flip side. So I know someone who actually took the opportunity to move out and start a small holding and, really enjoying the lifestyle. But because technically still employed by a London office, is expected now to be able to commute at least twice a week.
Whoa.
So it's not feasible to get from, Lincoln to London. Well, it's certainly expensive, especially when you're doing it just on a, return tickets. But it's not feasible, and that certainly doesn't give a proper balance. And that same person has been doing his work perfectly well from his small holding for over 2 years.
Yeah, and it is getting expensive, I have to say. I mean, I haven't looked at tickets to anywhere on a train recently from a work perspective, but I have from a leisure perspective. And at the end of the month, we were going to go into London actually by train, and I actually booked the hotel. I booked a hotel at Andover and thought I'm going to actually drive to Andover and then get the train in to London from Andover. And then I looked at the cost of the ticket afterwards. So fortunately, I always book so that I can cancel it. I then looked at the cost of the ticket from Andover into London, and it's phenomenally expensive. And last time I did that, it was probably about a third of the price.
Yeah.
I was talking about trips to London there, Graham. So if you go from Birmingham International, which is at the airport, to Euston, and I bet you it's about 100 miles probably as the crow flies. If you want an open return, which sometimes I would need depending on meetings overrunning, otherwise if you miss trains, you're then buying again, and you want to arrive before 11 o'clock in the morning, an open return is £188. to do. Now, £188. Now, obviously, it's a work thing, and obviously, it's something that I wouldn't personally be paying for. But I equally, have a sort of company hat on and go, is that delivering value for money? But if you want to keep the journeys open, and you don't want to commit to certain times, and you want to arrive by 11, which is perfectly reasonable, £188.
And do you know what seems to have happened with all of this as well, though? It seems that agenda that was on the table just prior to the pandemic about public transport and sustainability in the environment, try and use public transport more to reduce the amount of time people are spending in cars, gone off the table now. Why on earth, if you've got a vehicle and actually it's going to cost you probably a third of the price that it is to get on public transport, why are you going to do the public transport piece?
I did the same thing when I holidayed in the UK this year. So I went to the Lake District for the first time, and I was going to get the train, take a little tipple on the train.
Yeah,
and
nice. Relaxing,
it was so expensive. I was like, the drive will be fine.
Yeah. No, that's crazy.
But then think about it. What are we investing billions of pounds in as a country at the minute? HS2. We're investing billions of pounds in it. And yet we've got people, and we're discussing it between. I mean, we had a show where we talked about it being a massive white elephant, didn't we, Graham? But with what's gone on with home working, but the three of us are therefore sharing discussions about why we'd actually rather get in a car than take public transport. Something seriously needs to look at. As an example, when I go to our head office in the Netherlands, so I fly to Schiphol, and it's about an hour and 10 minutes. So let's say it's a similar journey time from the airport to the office. So I'm paying £188 return. That journey is about €35 return. So it's, let's say, a fifth of the price.
Yeah. I'd love to have a look at it, actually. I'd love to see what the difference in price is between going from Bristol Airport up to Edinburgh, or from getting a train via a flight, or getting a train now, Bristol to Edinburgh. I'd love to see the difference in it, but it won't make sense. And there's
your homework for next week, Graham. We want to see it we want a PowerPoint slide next week.
I'll have that all in a lovely graph and everything for next week. Absolutely. Now, look, while we've got Jodie here, let's go right back to the beginning of this conversation. So I've just been doing some research the last couple of days about the effectiveness of ergonomics from the point of view of should we be getting ergonomists into an organization reactively to try and train people to change their working habits, or should we be doing it proactively and changing the working environment and the working processes prior to the people coming in, so that actually we get it right in the first instance? So then, because humans don't change, it's really, really hard to get humans out of a habit. And we know that because we've been banging on about use a laptop stand with, for donkeys over the last few years, especially on this, the amount of times we've talked to people about that. And then you still see pictures day in, day out on social media. I'm an influencer. There's the laptop. It's like, even ergonomic posts. Well, I've even seen posts from people talking about ergonomics, and there they are sitting on a laptop all hunched over, and you think, just infuriating. But it's because people don't change. Their habits are bad. So we've got to actually change the environment first. And the studies that I've been reading have said that it's about 3 times as effective to actually change the processes in the environment first, rather than actually try and train people into changing once they're in a bad situation. How do you feel about that? But also, is that not the same in terms of things like inclusion and accessibility?
It's exactly the same is what I was going to say.
Exactly the same.
And also, it's that old adage, right? Prevention's better than cure. So it's about proactivity is always more important. I mean, if you think about a physical office environment, and that's where a lot of obviously ergonomics come in as well. If you actually create your environment with inclusion in mind, the reality is there will be less reasonable adjustments needed anyway, because people are already accommodated. There'll always be reasonable adjustments, but there will be less, because if you put in this, what you consider a standard that is often antiquated at best, then it only actually maybe is sort of suitable for maybe half the people. Well, you're just constantly chasing your tail and retrofitting. And it's the same with ergonomics.
Totally, absolutely, totally.
It'd be interesting, Graham, because we got a couple of guests lined up for the next couple of weeks. I don't know if I've told you this. I've just been off arranging guests. Just I haven't told you any of that. But no, we've got a couple of people coming up in the next couple of weeks. And one of the people who'll be joining us is from a manufacturer of sit-stand desks. So that'll be really interesting to hear from them. But another guy who I've got lined up, I've got lined up, is from an organisation that design workspaces. So it'd be really interesting when we discuss it with him as to what trends or changes he's started to see, and what sort of demand is he currently getting when he's going out to organizations. What are they asking for? So that'll sort of just build on this conversation here, find out a little bit more about what organizations are actually asking for from workspace designers.
Now, I am going to have a go at workplace designers, right? This minute. Yeah, I'm going to.
Can you at least wait till he's on the show? If he hears it, he might not come on the show.
No, and they can cut. Well, he can now prepare, and then he can come at me with his response to that. But yet again, I have seen from the A&D community, I have seen posts on social media in the not too distant past where the offices that they have designed, the spaces they have designed, have looked absolutely beautiful. They may have actually had some consideration of ergonomics as well, but they're not accessible. Completely not. And it's design over and aesthetics over practicality. Why still in this day and age? Why is that happening? Do any of you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the thing is, on that as well, I think companies, yes, you bring in experts, right? So you trust them, but you also have to have that conversation of what your clear expectations are. So partly, yeah, absolutely, the inclusion, accessibility, and of course I'd say that, but it's so true, is essential. But even other practicalities, like you often get these pretty things put in place. So I spent 20 years in property, and you get these pretty things put in place. When you need to replace one, it's 3 times the cost as all the others, because you had the one with the grommet in the certain place, or you've got a bespoke color for your branding, which is literally like a tiniest shade different to the other gray that they do as standard, and things like that. So it's so important that you're also thinking about what you want. So yes, they may be your expert, but you need to make your expectations clear that inclusion, that practicality, that longevity is actually going to work for you and your organization.
Jodie, quick question here from an accessibility perspective. Is it, and just talking there about what workspace designers are doing, is it the responsibility of the workspace designer to challenge the brief from the client? Or is it the responsibility of the client to make sure they specify it to the workplace designer? Or is it option C, which is a little bit of both?
So first of all, I'd say it's definitely a two-way street. But the other thing I'd say is often those companies and those designers don't have the experience when it comes to accessibility and inclusion. So that is where that should be part of that plan. But the reality is, if you're not, if you've not got the expertise there, you need to reach out to somebody who has.
Yeah.
And it's so important that, someone like me, it's so important that someone like me is in that mix, because then you can get it right. And you can even build your toolkit. So you don't necessarily need a me every time if you're fitting out to a certain spec, but you get it right the first time.
Yeah, I'm gonna add to this. Right. This is where it completely goes wrong, because I'm going to give you the scenario, act it out as though it's just happened, right?
Your best thespian bit.
Yeah. Okay. She did. She said thespian. Okay. Right. Just so you're aware. Well, there might be people that didn't hear that probably. Right. So This is Joe Bloggs. This is the company that wants it. Right. Yeah, Joe. Yeah. Okay, so I've just bought new office space. I've got about 600 square foot. Yeah, and I want to get about 40 people in there. Yeah. So if you could, so can you come over to do a quick measure up? Yeah, and then come up with a design for me. That's brilliant. And if you could leave a little bit of wiggle room as well, that'd be good, because we don't want to move from there for a bit. Yeah. I'm thinking sort of mid-range, kind of, not too expensive. Yeah, fine. But for management, obviously that's got to look good. Reception area's got to look good, because it's all about, it's just got to look good, because that's where the clients come in. Yeah, Tuesday, great. Right. So that's that's the call. That's what happens, right? And then someone comes along, measures it all out, starts CAD planning it. It's like, could you squeeze a few more in there? Right. There may be a little bit of kickback about health and safety. Well, we can't put any more there, because otherwise that gangway's like 0.9. It's got a meter. It's fire hazard. Where's your? We'll talk about storage. Where's your storage going to go? Effectively, you can't put your storage there because you can't access it properly. Gets signed off. Gets ordered. That is it. Sorry, but that is how most of it works. And the trouble is,
even when you get a specialist involved, it is so important you listen to them. And what I mean by that is, you might listen when it comes to specifying things like a reception desk, for instance, to make sure you've got a low-level accessible area.
It doesn't happen most of the time. Yeah.
But no, it doesn't happen enough, right? But the important thing is, any specialist worth their salt is going to also talk to you about educating your teams. Yes. And when you insist, been there, when you insist that, no, it's not necessarily, and we can do that, etc., etc. And then when you end up visiting them again a while later for a different reason, and that lovely, accessible, low-level reception space has a beautiful, very large pot plant on it, because it was a perfect place to put it, because it was just this empty, low-level, random space. What does it do? Yeah. And you kind of have to have that conversation all over again and ask reception, because I don't care, I'll ask anyone. Ask reception, why is there a big pot plant on your accessible reception? And they say, and now what? And when you explain, and then I go, oh, that makes sense. We just thought it was a bit random. There was like a lower bit, so we put a big plant on it.
I was laughing, Jodie. I was laughing because you actually reminded me of a real life situation.
Oh, that was real life.
Yeah, but where actually the cutaway at the front that was there for wheelchair access of a desk, someone had filled that up with plants, because it looked like a space that needed filling.
Yeah.
But there was a reason. There was a reason for that being there, and now you've decided to fill it with something. Just
and in their defense, they genuinely had no idea that was the intention of that area. As when I told them, they were like, oh, we didn't know. We'll have to get it moved quickly, and all this kind of stuff. And but that education piece, not only so they can use the desk correctly, and they can obviously point people in the right direction, and most people will gravitate naturally when they see what's accessible to them, but also that whole disability confidence piece that comes with it, particularly for your frontline staff, is so important, and it often just gets completely swiped.
So really, let's break this down. Really, the majority of businesses have got this completely topsy-turvy, wrong way round, inside out, because really what should be happening here is, I'm a business owner, I'm expanding into an office space, I've grown the business, I've now got staff, etc. What should I be doing? I should be getting an office designer who understands measurements, can CAD draw, understands specifications of furniture, all of those sort of things, aesthetics, good design, because good design is important as well.
Yeah.
Right. We want a place to feel nice. I want to be getting someone like that, plus someone like Jodie, who's an accessibility and inclusion advisor in, and an ergonomist in. Boom, all three in. Discuss, right? Every way through that plan, right? From the word go, and actually people, because you've got those people in, you'll start from a different starting point as well. You will not start from the plan. Before the plan even happens, people like Jodie and if we had an ergonomist in as well, we'll start from the point of, we want to talk to people. We want to find out what work is going on in here, or will be going on in here, who's doing that work, and how do they do that work, right? Because we want to make sure that the processes that are going on within that work environment can be done as effectively as possible with the people, and accommodate everybody as much as possible. So that, and I wonder, Len, that's the question that we need to ask when we get our person in, is how much time is spent actually asking the organization and asking the people within the organization prior to designing an office space what it is you actually do and how do you do it.
And actually, not necessarily how do you do it,
or
but how would you want to do it to make it a
very
lot more
good point.
productive.
Well done. Yeah.
Because so many people get so kind of caught up in the fact that it's always been this way. Even someone who needs an adjustment in it, they kind of learn to accept a lot of the time, which is, it shouldn't be that way. They learn to accept that it just is what it is. And when you are designing a new space, or even when you're refurbishing an existing space, you have a perfect opportunity to get it right. And you often find, for instance, because it's very standard in absolute most designs, in a building somewhere, you will have a prayer room or a multi-faith room, whatever you want to call it. Great, that's all part of that cultural piece. But when you start talking about where is the space people can go to from a sensory perspective, for instance, when people need that sort of wind down, or what, and we explain what it is, and they go, yeah, we don't have them. Well, no, you don't at the moment, and you can explain it. You can even get people to say, oh, that would be amazing. That would literally make all the world of difference. I'm always trying to find a meeting room, and it becomes more anxious because your first 7 are full and all that sort of stuff. And they still just sort of often stare at you like, but we don't do that.
Jodie, is there a legal obligation, whether it's on new buildings or fit outs, to include a multi-faith rooms and sensory rooms? Is there any legislation around that?
So this is kind of the thing with the whole protected characteristics and what would be an adjustment. And for instance, asking for a space to pray is that adjustment. So usually you'd be proactive with it. And again, technically, someone could say, I'm autistic. I get, really struggle with overload, and I need a space where I can go and sort of decompartmentalize. Easy for me to say. And that kind of thing. And actually, it is an adjustment. But this is where that proactiveness comes in, because actually, if you've already put it in place, you don't have to wait for Jodie to ask you.
Yeah.
Jodie's got one, Stephen's got one, Graham's got one. Guess what? They can share one. And it just works. And you're already setting everyone up for success. It's just getting people to think differently about what that success looks like.
Again, it does come down to, thinking about these things beforehand. I have another example here of, I remember with one organization that I was doing assessments for, they kept getting the requirement for a space for ladies who were pregnant to go and be able to lie down for a period of time during the day. But it was an important part of, looking after them pre-birth. Yeah, but they didn't have a space for that, So in the end, they actually cleared a space kind of behind some photocopiers and just and just put a row of chairs, with a pillow, and said, there you go. But the point is, which it actually wasn't a great space, but you know, it's kind of like, well, we've got to shove a space in now and make this happen. If you have someone asking those questions beforehand when you start planning or bringing these things up as this could, you know, this can be a potential, this can happen, therefore you perhaps need to think about it. You know, so much that we're so blessed these days in terms of furniture, for example. It's not like the good old days where like desks were made like, you know, out of solid bits of wood. You know, do you remember the old pedestal desks where like the top was supported by two pillars of, you know, looked like something out of the Covenant.
Half a redwood had been used to manufacture it.
Yeah, half a tree had been used. You know, it's not a lot of desking these days is quite component based and quite, you know, and you can even get things like desks on wheels or whatever that you can fold bits down and you can move them around. So clever thinking in the first place means that you can find ways of reutilizing a space in a different way when you need to use it in a different way.
It's also dual use. So I'll give you an example. People need to have more faith in their employees. So you often find you've got a first aid room and it's locked. And the only people that can open this room may not even be first aiders, it may be security, right? But the reality is, if you've got it right, you shouldn't need that room very often, hopefully, especially in a high risk environment, because you should have your health and safety right. So that room should be empty most of the time. So when you do have, for instance, maybe there is a pregnant woman who needs a rest break, a lot of wheelchair users actually need to lie flat periodically through the day because it really helps them with their well-being. And so being able to multi-use that room, for instance, where they can use it because it's empty. Yes, if there was an emergency, even have signage up, like in an emergency, we may ask you to vacate the room. Fine. You know, that is what it is. But then you can have that smart dual use and just have a bit more faith that people aren't going to leave it littered in cups and crisp packets. I mean, I don't know what people think is going to happen in these spaces.
Yeah. Do you know what? It really surprises me what people do think of, what people don't think of. Even things like evac chairs, for example.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of buildings that I've been to in the past where they go, yeah, well, we've got a lift. Right. So that's fine. But what happens when there's a fire? What do you mean? Well, in a fire, the lift won't work. If in fact, if you read the sign in the inside of the lift, it says in you know, in
case of a fire, do not use.
Do not use. Why? Because it's dangerous, right? And you know, and it will most lifts will shut off in the case of a fire. Yeah. The emergency will go and it will lock the lift. So right, so you've got someone on this floor in a wheelchair. How are they getting down the stairs then?
Yeah. Do you know what? We're going to have so many. I mean, Rob, I've asked Rob if he'll come on for one show. It could run into like a series. The amount of questions. I mean, we're going to have some serious prep and questions for him. It's going to be like PMQ, isn't it? He's just going to get bombarded with questions. But it's interesting because, as I say, we've talked about this, haven't we, numerous times? But it'd be interesting to get it from that side of the designer's perspective as to what do or don't they think about.
Well, I think so. It can be really scary as well when people tick certain boxes. So I was on a consultation recently for a large building that's being, well, I say large, a tall building that's being built in London, and it's going to have a roof kind of space. And so talking about accessible emergency exit from a certain floor, which is I think 2 below the roof space, there is a fire rated lift for exit. Wonderful. So I asked the obvious question, but obvious to me.
Yeah.
How do those people in an emergency get from the roof to that floor?
Yeah.
And I was told they had thought about that, but the fire assessor had signed it off. Okay, so what was the answer? Well, the fire assessor signed it off. Well, then what is the methodology? How are those people safely getting from the roof to the ground? Because there is a lift that takes them from that point to the roof point, but in a fire it should ground. So, and it wouldn't be safe to use anyway if it's not fire rated. So how are they getting to a point of safety? And they did say they'll go away again, but the kind of looks gave me a, oh, we've been here, like we've cleared this one off. Well, actually, no, you've ticked a box because you literally don't have a method. If I was a wheelchair user and I was on that roof terrace and the alarms went off and everybody else scarpers, what happens to me?
Yeah. I thought you were going to say the fire officer turned around and said, "Don't let anyone with a wheelchair use the top 2 floors." I thought that was what you were honestly going to say. That was his sign off, was no one above that.
Thankfully, no. But no. I still have
you
no idea.
You do get that though. Yeah.
I am waiting for a chase out, and I'm in a forum that we are actually like following up with lots of questions. But I'm waiting for the feedback. But it's just so scary when they say we did think of that, but the fire assessor signed it off. Now, and this is the other thing. Yes, they're the experts in the kind of fire safety element, but they're also human beings, and whether we like it or not, people make mistakes. And although they might have thought about it, did they actually then say, I know you signed this off, but for clarity then, you know, we've got this challenge. And that's really concerning to me, because if it genuinely had hit their radar and they hadn't challenged it themselves, it seemed too easy to go, yeah, do you know what, like let's not worry about that because we've already got our sign off, so let's move on because we can get our building finished. Well, that's wonderful, but like, who's getting harmed if the worst happens?
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate for some of the people that may be watching this over the coming week and are going, right, you know, you lot, this is all very well. You know, you're saying that all of this should be in place and, you know, we've got to think of this and you've got to think of that. But you're talking about a very small minority of people who are affected or impacted by that. So, you know, let's be realistic here. Why should we bother, right? You know, surely it's just a case of deal with it when it needs dealing with. You don't need to be why make all of these adjustments here? Now, I know, Jodie, you're going to put some stuff out next week. Some content out next week, which I'm looking forward to seeing, which is about festivals. Did you go to a festival over the summer at all, Stephen, or an event? Festival or an event? Yeah,
an event.
I know you went to see the Killers, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, very good band. Love the Killers.
Excellent.
You know, so let's look on the bright side here. I know. when you went to that event, were you aware of that event being, you know, accessible to everybody?
On the basis it was held at a football stadium, that I would, and football stadiums, and a newer football stadium, I should say, which I'd like to think when it was designed would have considered wheelchair users. I'd like to think it was, but the fact that doesn't necessarily mean it was. But I would have assumed that it would have, on the basis it was in a stadium that is potentially set up for wheelchair users, because it was at Coventry's football ground, which hosts rugby and football. So it's quite a heavily used stadium. So I would have expected to have been, but I guess possibly not.
So coming back to what I was just saying, and I don't want to steal the thunder of your content for next week, Jodie, but the point of the matter is, beyond kind of physical ramps and access and everything else, it's really about creating, in any environment, it's about creating experience for people. Okay. And if you exclude one person, how many more people are you excluding? Do you want to just say a little bit about that, Jodie? Because I think that's a really important point to touch on here.
Yeah, and I think this also comes back to a lot of assumptions that everything's about ramps and toilets, right? And also those toilets are only ever on ground level, because no one who needs an accessible toilet could possibly use stairs. And then a good example of that, a lady was talking to me recently about her experience, and she went to a stadium, was in like a VIP type area, which was very exciting, but it was literally about like 100 stairs up to it, but was what it was. So up they went. A few puffs on an asthma pump, if that was me, probably. But they got to the top, lovely setting. Then because of her own disability, she does need a fully accessible toilet. And so she went and asked security where the accessible toilet was. And they said, well, we won't have one up here. And she said, oh, where can I find an accessible toilet? Because I need one. And they said, well, disabled people can't come upstairs.
Oh.
Whoa!
Whoops.
And she was like, wow, well, just for the record, I am. So where can I go to the toilet? So he said, well, obviously, they're down the bottom. So she was like, are you seriously telling me that every time I need to go to the loo today, I have to go down all those stairs and back up again? And he's like, well, yeah, disabled people can't come upstairs. So that was kind of fascinating, if nothing else, but it was astounding. And the thing was, I don't suppose that person for a moment meant any harm.
No.
Just literally sort of said from the hip what he absolutely believed was to be the truth. Why on earth would you need an accessible toilet anywhere but where it gets to with a ramp? And so, yeah, all of those things is so important. You know, guide dog users, they can't just leave their dog wandering around. They take her with them, right? And there's so many different needs. And it's not just ramps and toilets. You know, it is about signage. It's about, you know, cognitive overload. So that's what I was talking about earlier, and having a little space where you can actually go to, especially in things like festivals, because as much as people enjoy the atmosphere, it can get very overpowering, and you sometimes just need that moment sort of back in the room, and then you can return. So yeah, and again, it comes down to education as well as the actual setting.
But you'll also be making the point during those pieces during the week that actually it's everybody else that you lose. And I think this is where people don't quite understand it, because, you know, you could lose a contract as a business.
Yeah.
Right. You do not know who's coming to that reception area. You might, the CEO of that business may have a disability, or they may be the brother or the sister of someone who has a disability. If they don't feel that you're disability confident, if they don't feel that you're inclusive, etc., they might just go,
forget it.
I don't like this. You know, I'm not signing a deal here. They're telling me on the one hand that they are this, but they're not. So, and that could be the difference between you getting that contract and you not getting that contract. I mean, you might be saying all the right things on paper, but if you're not showing people, you won't get it. And I mean, I'm just thinking, like, even for us as a family, our little one is, you know, is waiting for a diagnosis, but they think it's very definitely ADHD. You know, when we go out to places for the day, it's a bearing. If we walk into somewhere and you can see it's like, we don't like kids like that in here, right? You know, kids that like to spin a little bit and, you know, and need help to focus on something, right? We won't go there again. Whereas if someone goes, you know, recognizes and goes, well, would he like a worksheet? Would he like to do this? Would he like to, you know, do you know what? We've actually got you know, something over there that would probably really help, you know, then you'll go, do you know what? We'll come here again.
Yeah.
It really is as simple as that.
If you break it down almost as cynically from a business looking for customers, things like that get repeat customers and ultimately delivers profit. Now, I know we're talking beyond that, but if you look at it from a very simplistic sales perspective, how do you retain customers and get them to come back and back, give them the services and the function and give them what they need? Because now you'll go back to those places. So on a business level, you know, even if you put the accessibility piece to one side, from a sales perspective, you want repeat business. You want word of mouth to spread. So, you know, you're Sir Graham, your son's waiting for an assessment. But if you then get introduced from that to another group of parents who are looking for something similar, you recommend it to them, and word of mouth just spreads, doesn't it, from there?
Yeah.
If you think 1 in 5 people have a disability, and I know not everyone's going to have a partner, but obviously they've got friends. So if everybody came with someone, that's 2 in 5 people. And then, of course, a lot of people come with additional friends, family members, and so on. It's a massive proportion of your prospective clientele. And one of my newest words that I really like now is that all events and these kind of things should be anticipatory. You should expect, I like that now, you should expect disabled people to come to your events or to your venues. And actually, it's not even just those 1 in 5, because what about all the people that are temporarily disabled because they've had a skiing accident, or, you know, unfortunately they was unwell and it's caused a kind of physical injury or something. That's all extra numbers, and a lot of them people are your potential ticket holders. So yeah, come on, people.
No, absolutely. Let's take it back to even things like some of the products you sell, Stephen, or your business sells, you know, and let's go full circle with this conversation. Right at the start, I said, if you get the environment right in the first place, then it's more likely that people will do the right thing and adopt the right habits, right? Here's a challenge out there to people that are creating co-working spaces at the moment, right? It's going to be really hard to get people to potentially put in a bag at the beginning of the day, a laptop stand and a keyboard and a mouse, and go, right, I'm going out to work in London today and I'm going to use co-working spaces. I'm going to carry this around with me. It's not impossible. And with the right kit, you know, it's not heavy, so you can carry it and you have that on there. But imagine if people if people that run co-working spaces and different options for working said, right, when you come in this space, there's kit available for you.
The more accessible things like that are, the more they will be used and the more people will get the benefit.
Because my kit is heavy. My own fault for buying a really big laptop. I like the screen, but carrying my stuff around with me is backbreaking. So without a trolley case, it is just not feasible. And I've got to say, trolley cases and rush hour in London don't go well together.
No.
So yeah, that would be brilliant if these spaces could actually fit themselves out with a range of kit ready for people to use the pieces that work for them, set themselves up correctly, ready to go, winner.
Absolutely. So, you know, if you're creating those kind of spaces, if you're doing that sort of thing, get in touch with people like Stephen and talk to people like Jodie, like Stephen, before you even start. Because if you get it right, what are you doing? You're adding value, and you're actually saying, look, we thought about this space. You'll want to use this space. Not only will it attract people to use your space over somebody else's space, you're just helping them with their habits as well.
The other thing on that, from a commercial standpoint, is because more companies are, thankfully, starting to look at their accessibility and so on. And so if you can explicitly, and actively share the fact that, one, your venue's been made accessible, and that through the kit, etc., you create a more inclusive environment, you're going to be on more approved lists.
Yeah.
You're going to be added to, other lists anyway. And the reality is, people like me, and there's a lot of people in the accessibility space, you're who we can promote to actually, get involved in your space itself, because it works.
Now, Jodie, very quickly before we finish today, because we're getting near time, but I want to very quickly come to you on this. Are there people doing it? Because I saw a few years ago when I was invited to Sainsbury's headquarters, I saw an app where people were showing the accessibility features of hotels, right? So if you were going to book a hotel, rather than the usual drabness of, it's got a nice sea view, or it's got this or whatever, it from people that had actually accessed that building from a wheelchair or whatever, or had different disabilities, it had a review of that building from an accessibility point of view. Are people already looking to do that with workspaces? Because
I haven't seen it. I have seen it for travel. I haven't seen it for workspaces.
Let's register a domain name and sort it out now.
Graham's getting the .com ready as he's sort of doing it as we speak. Get that registered.
Wouldn't that be a great app though? Would that not be a great app? And actually, if you've got one of those apps, if that's something you're working on at the moment, I've just blown your cover. Do come and talk about it on this.
Yeah, I'd love to know.
Program, because wouldn't that be great if you could actually say, as part of this, you know, these are the spaces that, you know, or here's the accessibility rating, if you like, of this space. This is what it's got. This is what it will give you. Yeah, it's if you're a wheelchair user, you've got great access with this. You know, if you're you know, from an ergonomics point of view, that's what I want to know as part of a space, not just that it's got Wi-Fi and it's, you know, got great coffee. I want to know all of that other stuff as well. And
if someone wants to do a first look at how accessible they actually are, look on bepeoplesmart.co.uk. There's a free disability inclusion maturity model, completely free to download. And one of those business areas is built environments. And I would say this, but it really is. It's granular information, helpful guidance, and it will give you all the information you need to recognise how inclusive you are at the moment. You can set your scene for where you want to get to, and it'll also help you decipher what all the actions are. So obviously I'm here if you need more help, but you can do some of this for yourself. So take a look at the tool.
Oh, it's been a great conversation today.
Yeah,
thank
brilliant.
you, Jodie. Thanks, Stephen, for this. So look, people, the challenge is on. Okay, don't leave your customers feeling like this. Bring about a little bit of inclusion and accessibility.
If you can't see, Graham showing a crying teddy bear.
And turn them into this.
Yes.
And this is a panda munching on some bamboo.
Yeah, but it's a happy panda. Okay, let's just go like that. It's either a sad bear
or a happy panda.
Or a happy panda. We want more happy pandas out there, not sad bears, everybody. Have a great Friday, everybody.
Yeah.
We'll be back
Have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, you too. See you next week.
In the middle of next week, look out for some Wow Ergonomics YouTube-y style, where a group of us will be reviewing some really bad chairs. That will be on all of the platforms. Bye for now.
See you next week.
Take care.
Bye.